Guadalupe Mountains of Texas, rugged, forbidding country, where a man can get lost and die, or where he could have a gold mine of inexhaustible wealth. Such a man was Ben Sublett, a man with two faces. Hi, I'm Bill Burrud. The program is Treasure, and the story is a paradox. A paradox about a man known in legend as Ben Sublett, who had a fabled gold mine in the Southwest. Now, like these masks that I'm holding, comedy and tragedy, Ben Sublett's life was either a rollicking drinking spree or the sad struggle for existence by a sober, honest man, depending, of course, on which version of his life you accepted as the truth. Now, the town he lived in knew Ben Sublett as a drunken bum, but his family, well, they saw him as a fine, upstanding man trying to do his best to earn an honest living. Well, to shed more light not only on the story of Ben Sublett himself, but on the legendary gold mine, I want you to meet the man we sent to Texas to do the story for us, Ron Munns. Ron, you know, I've heard about Ben Sublett's story for many, many years. It's a fascinating one. What kind of research did you get on the story?
Well, some very fine research was done, Bill, by Tom Penfield, our treasure expert. Now, when he turned his file of research over to me, he said at that time that the Ben Sublett story was one of the most authentic lost mine stories of the Southwest. Of course, this was very exciting. And yet, when we went into the Southwest, we found that it was a paradox in a different way. Granted, facts were known about Sublett himself, where he lived and where he died was known, and yet it seems that the very gold that he possessed has distorted the facts about him. Prejudice has entered into it. And so it seems that he is a man with two faces. Now, we know that one of these faces must be false, but which one? That's the question, and that's the question that our film poses. Now, this is one of the true stories of the Southwest, and our story begins in western Texas.
This is El Paso, Texas. El Paso del Norte, the pass to the north from Old Mexico. Now, along with Juarez, Mexico, it's one of the fastest growing, most industrialized areas in western Texas and the Southwest. And the plaza here is a reminder of the old days of El Paso, the historical West that's its background. It's a city that commemorates its pioneers, and it recognizes the role that the railroad played in building this part of our country. Old engines, such as this one, not only brought the supplies that made the West, but also thousands of new pioneers. That the railroad brought west in the middle of the last century was William C. Sublett, who became known in legend as Ben Sublett. He was a former Civil War soldier, former Confederate soldier, and he came west right after the Civil War, bringing with him his young wife, who tragically died 2 or 3 years later, leaving him with 3 small children. Now, they first settled in what is now the little town of Monahans, Texas, which is about 100 miles east of El Paso. And then they moved to Odessa, Texas, about 20 miles further east. And that's where William or Ben Sublett lived and where he died. Now, the wealth in those days when Sublett was in this part of the country was in cattle. And today, further north in the famous Panhandle, you can still see thousands of head of cattle, one of the great cattle-raising centers of the world. Sublett himself wasn't a cattleman. As a matter of fact, there aren't very many in that part of Texas where he lived. Today, the new wealth is oil. It's completely transformed the face of western Texas. As a matter of fact, we went for days without seeing a single head of cattle. But wherever you go in the prairie land now, it's dotted with oil wells.
This is the black gold of Texas, then, right?
That's right, and Bill, literally, it's made poor people into millionaires overnight. But although many things in this part of the country have been changed, there's still things that are very similar to the days when Sublett was here. For instance, the dust is still kicked up by the wind just about every day. There's hardly a day passes that you don't end up with a little bit of grit in your teeth, just the way the men that rode the range in Sublett's day did. Now, we went down this dusty street in Odessa, Texas, to meet one of the oldest pioneers in this part of the country, a man who actually knew William C. Sublett, and we're going to talk to him in just a moment. This is Julius Henderson. He's in his 80s now, and he's the oldest citizen in Odessa, Texas. Now, this is a real live cowboy. This man has ridden on horseback in almost every western state. Now, he was 14 years old when William Sublett died. So we actually didn't have a direct acquaintance with him, but Henderson's father did, and he can remember hearing his father and the other men of the town talk about Sublett and what a character he was. So we spent some time with him, and he told us one version of Sublett's life. And this is the version that the town tells, the version that Julius Henderson remembers. Now, the Ben Sublett that the town remembers would be found in one of the local saloons. And he'd be paying for his drinks with almost pure gold, nuggets of very valuable ore. Now, of course, this made him pretty attractive to some of the citizens of Odessa. And most all of them were pretty curious about him. But there were very few of them that actually admired him or thought very much about him at all, because they said that he was a man of questionable character, that he often left his 3 children in the care of other families and just led a pretty carefree kind of existence. Almost threw the money away that he secretly had possessed.
Well, Ron, a lot of people don't realize it, but this was the true days of the West, wasn't it?
That's right. This is what we know today, Bill, as the Wild West. Now, one of the stories that's told about Sublett goes like this, that one day he made one of his frequent trips to the Guadalupe Range. Now, every once in a while, he'd take these trips, and they'd last sometimes for several weeks. And when he returned, he'd return with more gold. Now, this particular trip, he was followed by 2 desperados. There were plenty of men like this, men who would stop at nothing to find out where he was getting this gold.